Hello everyone, I hope that you are doing well. In the last video, which was devoted to the grammar translation method, which is in fact the first method in this course, in which we are reviewing the methods and techniques of language teaching. We have reviewed the main principles and techniques of the grammar translation method. Now, in this video, we turn our attention to the second method, known as the direct method. First, we are going to set up the objectives or the learning outcomes of this presentation. Then, raise the main questions that this presentation tends to answer. Next, we will try to define the direct method, identify its principles and features, and finally, identify the main techniques. For now, let us move to the learning outcomes. As you see, by the end of this course, you will be able to define the direct method, compare its features with the previous method, grammar translation method, identify its principles and techniques, decide on which technique or techniques to implement in your ESL classroom. Perfect. To meet the presentation's questions, the following questions will be answered. The first question: what is the direct method? The second question: what are its main defining features? The third question: how is it different from the grammar translation method? Finally, what are its essential principles and techniques? So, let's get started and try to define the main features of the direct method and the context in which it came to being or prominence. Let us consider the following quotations. The first quotation: since the grammar translation method was not very effective in preparing students to use the target language communicatively, the direct method became popular. So that means what? So this is the context. That is to say, this method of teaching was developed as a response to the grammar translation method. Here are some of its features by which it is defined and distinguished from the grammar translation method. Now look at the first feature or aspect. The direct method has one basic rule: no translation is allowed. All teaching or instruction is done in the target language. The focus is on speaking and listening, and only useful everyday language is taught. It receives its name from the fact that meaning is conveyed directly in the target language through the use of demonstration and visual aids. The last quotation: no recourse to the student's native language. Excellent. We may conclude from these quotations that the direct method, unlike the grammar translation method, encourages students to use the target language communicatively. So communication here, the language is used to communicate. There is no room for a translation. So the teacher or student don't translate in the classroom. They use language. Instructions are given in the target language. So the native language is not allowed, it's not used in the classroom. The teacher demonstrates and use visual aids. So these are the main features of the Tuareg method. Well, in order to see that in more details, let us move to the second section in which we are going to find out more about the principles of the Tuareg method. Note that in the first video, the video of the course introduction, I mentioned that in order to deal with the principles of each method, we will be each time answering 10 questions. You may ask me, why should we do so? I say, very simply, answering these questions will help us come to a better understanding of the Tuareg method. Good? Now, let's start with the first question. What is the teacher's goal in this method, in the Tuareg method? The answer is, in this method, teachers intend that students learn how to communicate in the target language. So that is the main goal or the purpose of teaching or of learning in that method. Now, how to do that? To do so successfully, students should learn to think in the target language. That means they are not going to translate the meaning of the text given to them. Now, let's move to the second question. What is the teacher's role, or what is the student's role in this method, in the Tuareg method? The teacher directs the class activities. Yet, the student's role is less passive than in the grammar translation method. The teacher and the students are more like partners in the teaching-learning process. The third question, what are some characteristics of the teaching-learning process? The answer is, teacher demonstrate the meaning of a new target language word or phrase through aurelia, or say objects, pictures, or pantomime. Teacher never translates. Students speak in the target language and communicate as if they were in real situations. Another characteristic, students practice vocabulary by using new words in sentences. The syllabus is based upon situations or topics. So when we say situations, it means like at the restaurant, at a bank, at the shopping store, etc. And when we say topics, like talking about geography, talking about money, etc. Okay, the last characteristic is that grammar is taught inductively. Inductively means that the students are presented with examples and they figure out the rule from the examples. Okay, the next question. What is the nature of interaction between the teacher-student or the student-students? Here we go. Now look at the interaction is from teacher to students and from student to teacher. Students converse with each other as well. So here we have students and we have teacher-student. So it is fine here. Now let's move to the next question. What areas of language that are emphasized, and what are the language skills that are emphasized? Let's start with the first question. What areas of language are emphasized? And here's the answer. Vocabulary is emphasized over grammar. Pronunciation also receives attention right from the beginning of the course. So these are the areas of language. Now, what about the language skills? All the work on 4 skills, so here we have the work on the 4 skills, but look at oral communication is seen as basic. That means they focus more on the oral communication in situations, in real situations. The following question is that how language and culture are viewed. Now let's see how culture is viewed. Culture is also studied, consisting of the history, the geography, and information about the daily life of the target language speakers. So cultures means here history, geography, and the daily life. So here we learn situations. Now, what about language? How language is viewed? Language is primarily spoken, so the focus is here on the spoken language, okay? Not on the literary language, okay? Not written. Therefore, students study common everyday speech in the target language. Okay, the other question, the role. What is the role of the student's native language? Okay, what about the student's native language? So that is the principle. It should not be used in the classroom. So that is the principle in the direct method. The student's native language is not used in the classroom. Another question, how is evaluation accomplished? That means if you want to test your student, okay, how you are going to handle that. Students are asked to use the language, not to demonstrate their knowledge about language, using both oral or written skills. So the emphasis is on the use of language, not your knowledge about language or literature. Okay, also, so when we say the oral, using both oral and written skills, of course we talk about the interview. That means you may test your student by an interview. Or you may ask them to write a paragraph about the geography or to describe a city of that country. Okay, the last question. What is the teacher response to the student errors? That means when students make a mistake, okay, how, or make errors, how the teacher respond. The teacher tries to get students to self-correct whenever possible. Okay, so we have here self-correct. Okay, now that we have seen the main principles of the direct method, okay, we can move to techniques. Let's start with the first technique, reading aloud. So here students take turns reading sections of a passage, a play, or a dialogue out loud. After reading, the teacher uses gestures, pictures, realia or objects, examples, or other means to make the meaning of the section clear. The second technique is question and answer exercise. As a teacher, you ask your students questions and answer in full sentences so that they practice new words and grammatical structure. It should be noted here as well that this exercise is conducted only in the target language. The third technique, getting students to self-correct. By this technique, you have your student self-correct by asking them to make a choice between what they said and an alternative answer you as a teacher applied. Okay, now the fourth technique, conversation practice. You may ask your student a number of questions in the target language, which the students have to understand to be able to answer correctly. Okay, the fifth, fill in the blank exercise. This technique has already been discussed in the grammar translation method, but it differs in its application here. All items are in the target language. Sixth, dictation. Teachers read the passage 3 times. Okay, in the first time, students listen. In the second time, students write down what they have heard. And the third time, they check their work. The seventh technique is map drawing. In teaching a topic about geography of a country or a city, for example, teacher may draw a map in order to demonstrate. The last technique is paragraph writing. So here teachers ask the student to write a paragraph in their own words on the features or the topic they have just discussed or learned about. In practice, this method stands for the following principles. First, classroom instruction was conducted exclusively in the target language. That means never translate. Instead of that, you may demonstrate. Second, only everyday vocabulary and sentences were taught. Third, oral communication skills were built up in a carefully graded progression organized around question and answer exchanges between teachers and students. Fourth, grammar is taught inductively. Fifth, vocabulary is taught through demonstration, objects, and pictures. Sixth, both speech and listening comprehension are taught. The last one, correct pronunciation and grammar are emphasized as well. Perfect. Now that we have concluded the main principles and techniques of the Taurek method, that is the second method in this course of methods and techniques in the language teaching. Fourth video, we will turn our attention to the third method known as the audio lingual method. Until then, stay tuned.